Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, online audience, members of the press. Thank you very much for being here, and thank you to DCNA for inviting me. I'm going to tell you a story, but the first thing I have to do is to acknowledge the person that is particularly responsible for this story, and that's Tim van Hattem, who is one of my colleagues back in Wageningen. This is the book he's recently written, which is very much based on the Netherlands 2120 story about what we should do in order to act in relation to climate change. Better? Yeah. And it's time for action, and one of the things he also says is it's not too late for action. And I'll tell you something about that as we go on. Where did that come from? I run a program in Wageningen which is called Nature Inclusive Transitions. And the idea of that program is that we work with business, industry, other sectors in order to see how they can include nature within the work that they do. And we're not, in that sense, ecologists. We are social scientists, we are economists, who bring ecology into this field. And over the last 5 years, we've run something like 60 projects, which you can find at that website there, which are basically about that level of integration. And it's a very interesting area, I have to say, and I can tell you about one of those projects. We've all heard about why we're doing this. And this is a wonderful, Mackay's wonderful illustration of and amusing as well, be sure to wash your hands and everything will be okay. Climate change, biodiversity collapse. What I like about this is that it also has impacted at the highest level. So the G7 in 2020, 2021, gosh, these dates, honestly. Well, it's my own fault as well, yeah. In 2021, in relation to the 2030 Nature Compact, said our world must not only become net zero, but also nature positive for the benefit of both planet and people. And that's at the highest level. This is G7 that has stated this. We have to take notice of this at every level. You can follow that link to find that. I'm sure these PowerPoint presentations will be made available at some point somewhere. So, let's start the story. The Netherlands. It's a low-lying country in northwest Europe, and it is very vulnerable to the impact of climate change. In fact, large parts of the country are below sea level by some meters, as you know, and have been reclaimed from the sea in the past. Nature-based solutions offer, for the Netherlands at least, a number of possibilities. They're resilient and adaptable. So imagine the difference between an area of open mudflat that takes water in it versus a concrete wall to stop the water from coming in. The concrete wall costs millions to build and millions a year to maintain, whereas a mudflat is a natural area, a natural solution to that problem of rising sea level. They do deliver ecosystem services, as we've heard. They're cost-effective over time. They are long-term sustainable. They have some aesthetics. This mudflat you can see here has got a few white dots on it, as far as I can tell, which are probably birds, waders. And in fact, you probably know that the Dutch coastline holds an enormous number of birds because it was once a delta, and all those birds used to stop there when they were migrating from north to south, south to north again. It can sequestrate carbon. These aren't my teeth, I'm actually breaking them in for somebody else. It delivers biodiversity conservation, and it has a range of social and community benefits and reduces environmental impact, we hope. This is the French fishing fleet, or part of it. If you go to southern Brittany in France, there is a place where you can find these wonderful ships, beautifully aesthetic, in a kind of dilapidated way, and it represents a failure of our management of ecosystems, because these ships should still be catching fish, and they don't because the fish aren't there anymore, and the fleet has been completely decimated by that. I put that in really just to give you that message. Somebody came to me, so I run that program, and we had a competition for projects in the program, and Tim van Hattem came to me in 2018, 2019, and basically suggested an idea. He had a 100-year vision for the Netherlands. He had a multidisciplinary approach, which is something else that we want. So he had 15 researchers from 5 institutes, economists, social scientists, a range of others, plant sciences, animal sciences, and so on. And he had an idea about nature-based solutions being the solution for the problems that we're facing in the Netherlands. And his output was a report and a map. Okay, that sounded pretty good. We were convinced. We gave him the money. Not so much, actually. And this is the map he produced. It is all about doing, and this is the Netherlands, by the way, and it's on its side. You don't normally see it like that. But the point is, he was suggesting that we should do things differently. We should look at the Netherlands differently. And although it's not so obvious, what you see here is that there's much more land underwater, and it's much greener than it used to be. Probably most of the people that used to live there are now living in Germany in 100 years' time. But that's just another issue. It had immediate impact. He launched it at the end of December 2019, the report and the map. So effectively it came out on the 1st of January. Nobody was doing anything on the 1st of January. But the 2nd of January, there was no news at that point, 2020. The media picked this up big time. That might just have been coincidence, good luck, but they picked it up and they ran with it. The other thing is, it's about the future, not just now or 2 to 3 years from now. So it gives you breathing space to be able to imagine what could happen. And part of the problem we have, part of the problem that politicians have, for instance, is they have to get things done in a short space of time. That doesn't give you breathing space to have big vision. And this did. And it is a big idea. It's about the whole country and how it could look. And hidden in there, for instance, in order to achieve these nature-based solutions, to reduce carbon emissions, for instance, and methane emissions, the proposal was to reduce the number of cows in the Netherlands by half. And you know that the Netherlands is basically about black and white cows. There are several million there. Of course, this wasn't very popular with our animal science researchers because, you know, there's about 2 million cows and there's about 200 science researchers, animal science researchers. They'd have to be reduced to 100 if we only had half the number of cows. So they weren't so happy about that. And what it also had was a highly articulate figurehead, Tim van Hattem himself, who was able to promote this idea effectively, nicely, and wasn't scared to stand up in front of the media and to talk to them and to take the challenges that he was offered and basically ping them back at him, at the interviewers and the people that were asking these difficult questions. This is Mark Harbers, who was the then Minister of Infrastructure and Water Management in the Netherlands, and he's receiving the report. Let's have a look. These are my props. There we are. There it is. That's in Dutch. It's also in English. And that's important in terms of communication, because this is a big idea. You want it to be available to lots of people. He was very impressed by this, and it has gone right up to the highest level. And I don't know if you heard Frans Timmermans talking recently when he was actually promoting himself as the new leader of D66. What he wants to be. Sorry? No, it's not D66, is it? Yeah, no. That just pinged into my mind. I don't know why. But at the end of his speech, and of course it's always a bit dangerous for researchers to get too close to politicians because, you know, they can be criticized for that. he actually quoted this and said, I want this report by Wageningen University to plot the future for the Netherlands in the next 100 years, which is pretty good, I think. So it just gives an indication about how an approach can work and how nature-based solutions actually capture the popular imagination. And more recently, we went to Brussels because we produced this, which is imagining a nature-based future for Europe in 2120. And we had 200 people in a big auditorium in Brussels, including politicians, policymakers, basically to promote this idea across Europe. That's probably above regional scale. I don't know. Do you think that's regional scale or above? It's bigger, isn't it? Yeah. So this is the kind of level that we could imagine for nature-based solutions. And if you think about Europe, you think about the glaciers in the Alps, which feed all of the major rivers, the Danube, the Rhine River, any of the big rivers that you can think of, they are disappearing. 2 years ago, when we had a really bad time, the rivers dried out and the river traffic had to stop because it simply couldn't go up and down the rivers. What are we going to do about that? Well, in here are some ideas generated in a participative way to solve that problem. Now, I'm just going to accelerate. Take this one out because I need it next. So we got that response. The ministerial impact, I think, was that we made a proposal to the national growth funds, and we achieved a project fund of 120 million to take this forward, of which 70 million became available, 20 million to Wageningen, but also to other universities and institutes within the Netherlands to realize this and upscale it over the coming 10 years. And we've trialed it through the project funding that I manage. We've trialed it at regional level, and what you can see there is a map of the Arnhem region where they're looking at how you can deliver these approaches, nature-based approaches at that level. The people in this room are not nature. They're all the stakeholders. Well, I'm also in that picture, but that's just sort of by the by. So let's very quickly just see why partnerships are important, because this is the sort of the second key part of this story. It helps you to address complex and interconnected challenges. You get multiple stakeholders, multiple issues, and no clear solutions. The only way you can address those challenges is by working with other sectors and stakeholders. A bit of biodiversity visiting me here. In terms of problem solving, partnership across sectors allows a more flexible and resilient approach. The solutions are better through partnership. I'm not going to read the whole thing out, but you get it, I think. If we want to scale up, can you imagine we can't do that with the nature sector? We can't do Europe with the nature sector. We can't do the Netherlands with the nature sector alone. We have to work with the other sectors in order to achieve what we want. It is about big-scale partnership. And funding and resources as well. Those sorts of partnerships can result in an ability to tap into funds that you would never have thought were available. I actually talked to a hotel owner here 6 weeks ago. I do like it here, by the way. I always come back. And I said, what are you going to do about sea level rise? And he said, well, I think we need to designate the whole of the coast around the island as a marine protected area and plant mangroves on the reef islands and on as much of the coast as possible. This was a hotel owner. He didn't really have much empathy for the biodiversity aspect, but he did see that biodiversity could offer him a nature-based solution to a coming problem. I found that very interesting. Would he be willing to pay for it? I'm not sure, but it is at least a door that's beginning to open in that sense. And of course, you need to share your knowledge and expertise. I always wanted to be sent off, and I never was. And I've just seen the red card at the back of the room. As you can see, I'm still here, by the way. Policy and regulation. Well, you can see I've been here before because this is a local photograph. We need to work with the policymakers and government in order to get the right policy in place to achieve these things. We heard about how finance can be a basis of policy. In Europe, of course, we've worked with landowners for decades with compensation funding in order to convince them or help them to do nature-positive work. So these things, and that's legislated for, so that these things do exist. And there's also public awareness and engagement, which is vitally important. Adaptive and resilient solutions. Let me get to the end here. So this is also a Caribbean journey. And the document you can see there, Bonaire 2050, was produced a couple of years ago. There it is. It was basically a trialing of the NL 2120 approach at island level. It involves stakeholders from across the island, a series of moderated, facilitated meetings where people, actually you can't see it very well, but they put their ideas on specially made cards on a map of Bonaire, and from that we were able to determine the kind of thing that they wanted for the future. And the good news is, I think it's very good news actually, is that we started this process 6 or 7 weeks ago in Aruba. And to explore the potential images of future Aruba. The minister was there, he opened the meeting for us and attended the first part of the meeting and saw the kind of thing that we were doing, which is basically to engage with stakeholders from different sectors to come up with that long-term vision, that non-threatening vision through which you can find a better future. And the big news is, looking at WWF at the back there, this week, another document was published, Nature-Based Solutions for Flood Resilience on Bonaire. And this is actually exactly what we're talking about today. And let's think about these kinds of things and possibilities for other islands within the Dutch Caribbean. Okay, I'm going to whiz through the learning points because I think it's important. If you want this to work, you've got to imagine a big idea and you've got to work on longer timescales. You've got to take a whole of society approach. We are just, the environment sector is just a stakeholder within this, okay? So we're not up there, we're not the billy goat on the highest rock. We're there with the rest of the herd in this process. We can drive it, but we have to be part of it in that sense. Communication is critical. It must fit the stakeholder groups. If you're talking to a minister, think about his audience when you talk to him or her. Don't think about what you want to say, just think about what that person needs to say to their audience. Same applies to the finance sector and business. You need to be adaptive and change as you go on. Don't get stuck on ideas. Don't ignore technical solutions because they are still useful. The future isn't only NBS. We also have to rely on the technology we have, which is fantastic, by the way. It's just that NBS offers us something that is more resilient and sustainable, but it should be in conjunction. Keep it simple. Partnerships cost time and energy. You have to invest in those, and you have to develop a new skill set. You have to be moderators, facilitators. Train yourselves, or employ people who can do this. There is nothing like the vision and power of collective imagination. And just think, finally, about the cost of doing nothing. Okay? What is the cost of not doing anything? How long? So you think about islands, Dutch islands, they make an offer, don't they? It is an offer. It's about sea, sun, sand, in some cases, or maybe other things. How long can you sustain that offer if you don't do something now? What about the investment that has been made in relation to that offer? Can we afford to lose that investment? Can anybody? And just measure that against the benefits of taking action. It's not too late to act. Thank you, Tim. And inclusive partnerships really are, I think, the key to a viable future. That's all. Thank you.